Hello Stampers, this is Dena from pocketfulofstamps.com. Thanks so much for joining me today. What I want to share with you is this fun fold card. I made this with the Share What You Love suite, and I want to say that this is turning out to be one of my very favorite suites. Just the stamps and the papers and all the different elements that go with this suite. There's so many fun things you can do with it. This card is pretty easy to make, so let me show you how I did it. Oh, and here, let me show you really quick how it opens too. Just like that. Okay, let me show you how I did it. Okay, you'll need several pieces of paper, and mine are already cut, and I will go ahead and score this one, and I'll give you the score information here in just a second. But I have all my pieces cut here, and I want to go through those really quickly. First of all, my card base is Rich Razzleberry, and I cut it in half the long way so that it measures 4 1/4 inches wide by 11. In just a second here, I'll score it. You're also going to need a piece of Tranquil Tide cardstock. And what I did is I actually started with it as a 3 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. I ran it through the subtle embossing folder. If you haven't seen this embossing folder, it's really hard to see in the catalog, and I'm not sure you're going to be able to see it here either very well. This is a really, really neat embossing folder, and it gives almost a linen type texture to your paper. But once I ran it through that embossing folder, I cut it at 3 1/2 inches. So I have a 3 1/2 by 3 1/4 by 3 1/2 and a 3 1/4 by 2 inch piece. Then I also have a couple of just 1 inch scraps here. I have a piece of the Share What You Love Specialty Designer Series paper that is cut 2 1/2 inches by 4 1/2 inches. And then I have one of our pearlized doilies. I have a powder pink piece of paper that I've cut out of the Stitched Circles framelits. And I wanted to show you here which one. I used this third one in here to cut this, and I really like this size. When I'm done here, it fits so nicely right on top of that pearlized doily, just like that. So it's this stitched framelit. Then I also have a couple pieces that I'm going to use on the inside, and I'll go over those in just a minute. But the first thing I wanted to do was score my paper. So this is our score tool. And I want to lay this down here. I've already put my little guides up here where I'm going to score at, but for your reference, this one is set at 3 1/2 inches, and this one is set at 9 inches. So I'm going to score my lines. Okay, now that that's scored, there's a couple different ways you can fold this. I found that if I fold, when you score, well, let me go back here. When you score, you end up with a little valley here, and on the other side, it's kind of raised up. I like to score away from my valley. What I'm finding is that when I cut my paper lengthwise like this, you can get little tears on your folds. It's almost like folding against the bias if you're a sewer. So I like to fold my score lines away from the valley like that. And because I want this to lay really nice and flat when I'm done, I'm going to use my bone folder and score those really well. Okay, now I'm going to take my little pieces here and add some adhesive on the back. This bigger piece is going to go on this side. And I actually cut this just a little bit long, and I'm going to trim this extra little bit off here. I do that when I'm going to put something through a embossing folder because some of the folders will make your paper shrink a little bit if there's a lot of texture on it. This one doesn't have very much texture actually, so it didn't really shrink my paper much. So I'm going to need to do a little tiny bit of trimming right here. You can see where that hangs over just a little bit. So you can just take your paper snips and trim it off on both sides. Okay. Next, I'm going to take these two pieces. You actually could have just one long piece here if you wanted to, and then trim it as you go. But I happen to have two little leftover pieces that were this long, so I just went with this. But again, I'm going to stick this on here and trim this extra little bit off. And I'll do the same on the other side. Okay. It's stuck on there. Okay. Next, I'm going to make my little fun fold part here. And I want to start by stamping this piece. And this again is the powder pink. I have a couple of stamp pads. I have Old Olive and Tranquil Tide. And I'm going to start with the Old Olive. Oops, let me get my stamp set here too. Again, I'm using the Love What You Do stamp set. I'm going to pull a couple of my stamp pieces out here and put them on my clear blocks. And that one, whoops. And which is the other one I used? This one. All right. So I'm going to start with this one in the Old Olive. What I want to do is ink it up, stamp it off on my scratch paper so that it's going to be a little bit lighter, and stamp it. And then I can go with the Tranquil Tide. And ink this one up and stamp it just right on top there like that. So you get a little bit of the foliage there in the background. And then I'm going to layer this onto my doily. I just love the way that just gives you the perfect little border there with the pearlized doily in the background. All right, the next thing I did was I added a little bit of ribbon to the back here. And I'm using this green ribbon from the metallic ribbon combo pack. This is a really fun ribbon pack. It's metallic and shiny, and it's got both the spools in it. You get 5 yards of each in a package, and I'm going to use the green one. So what I want to do here is just add some adhesive on the back, and I'm going to start on one side, kind of have that little end stick over there, and wrap this around. And I'm just sticking it down to the adhesive that I put down. And I can trim this off on this side. And then I like to add a little bit of extra adhesive on here, just so it doesn't move around at all. And that piece is going to get layered onto the front of my little gatefold. I think that's what this is actually called, as a gatefold card. All right. Now, what I need to do to attach this, I want to make sure that I don't attach it over on this side, I want to make sure that it's only attached on this side. So what I like to do is kind of fold my paper over here so I can see where it is, and then I'll just add adhesive right there. So we'll layer that down there. And I did make sure I did not get adhesive on this side. Okay. Next thing I added was a little bow with the linen thread. So I'll just double this up and tie a little bow. And I kind of just play with this a little bit, oops, actually, oh, there it is. Never mind. Just kind of work this till it looks the way I want it to. And then I'll trim it. And I like to just use a little mini glue dot to attach these. So I'll just find my glue dot on here and stick my bow in there. This glue dot is a little bit wider than the knot on my bow because I use the linen thread, which is thin. So I just kind of fold it over on the back, but it holds really nicely. Stick that down there. And then the last thing I added on the front were a couple of our little basic adhesive-backed sequins. And these are really nice because they have adhesive on the back of them. So I placed a couple up here. And one there. Okay. Now I just need to finish up the inside because I used a dark color. Sometimes I won't put anything on the inside, but if I use a dark color of paper, sometimes I like to put a lighter color piece of paper. So this is just Whisper White that I cut 4 inches wide by 5 1/4 inches, and it's just going to fit really nicely in there. But I wanted to pull in a little bit of that background paper also, so I just have a little 3/4 inch strip. I'll put a little bit of adhesive on that and layer it over here on the side. And adhesive on the inside. And center that up. Okay, and there I have my finished card, like that. Thanks again for joining me for this card quickie video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to my blog at pocketfulofstamps.com. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Facebook. Until next time, happy stampin'!